In today's 100th episode of the Fast Forward Amy Show, we gotta celebrate, obviously. And in order to celebrate, I am taking you with me in a behind the scenes view of our business, of everything that's changed since we started the first episode when I was by myself with one virtual assistant to today with a full-time team running the entire show. We are recording this live, so that's really exciting, and I hope you will really enjoy the behind the scenes look of everything that we've done with the podcast that we did really good at, like everything that we won at, that we failed at, what we learned, updates about the team, about just me as a CEO, as a personal brand, and so much more, and even our sales stats from this year. Hello, and welcome to the Fast Forward Amy Show, the show where we lift your life and business with simple strategies. I'm Fast Forward Amy, your host and coach, and I'll bring you a new episode every Tuesday. 2.5 years ago, I really wanted to start a podcast, but I didn't know how to do it. And not only did I not know how to do it, I was really afraid I was going to fail. My environment didn't believe in me because they were like, why are you making something that is going to cost you that much effort and making that for free? Like, what are you going to get out of it? No one would listen to my opinion about why a podcast would be a good idea. And I was really afraid. I thought, what if I launch a podcast and I put all of this effort into it and no one listens? Or even worse, what if I launch a podcast and people start listening and then they really hate it because I am so bad at it? And I didn't want to start over like an amateur, by then my business was already fairly successful. I had built a personal brand on social media, and I thought to myself, what if I start and I really look like an amateur and I cannot get away with that? So I was terrified of launching a podcast. So I went through all of the steps of procrastination. I bought a course on podcasting. I bought Pat Flynn's podcasting course. I bought Jenna Kutcher's podcasting course. I watched Pat Flynn's podcast course. I went through the course with my virtual assistant, so she knew all the steps as well. I bought the most expensive microphone I could find by Amy Porterfield, but get this, back then that wasn't that easy for me, so I bought the microphone. Then I didn't launch the podcast again because I kept postponing it and I kept wanting to make it perfect. I thought it doesn't just have to be a good podcast, the audio needs to be perfect. All of it needs to be perfect, and I need to make sure that I actually get sales from it. So, long story short, it took me a really long time to get over myself. And when I finally did, so I had postponed launching it in summer. I think that's summer 2019 now. And then by wintertime 2019, I was going to launch it, but I wasn't ready yet. And I was ready to leave for a vacation in the Dominican Republic. And I thought, yeah, I'm not going to launch it now because then I'll be on the vacation during the launch and then I can't really have the vacation. So I postponed it again until January. January 7th was D-Day. And I thought, okay, this time I really need to get over myself. So I hacked myself in the best way I know how to. I hacked myself by involving other people. I told my virtual assistant, this time it's really happening. And I told my audience, this time it's really happening, because I had already started getting messages from people about, hey, Amy, weren't you launching a podcast? Where's your podcast? So finally I launched it, and I was going to launch it January 7th of 2020. So this is a couple of months before the sea situation hit the entire world. And I launched it. I hosted a podcast launch party, all exactly according to that course I followed by Pat Flynn. And in that first month, I hit 6,900 downloads. And I was over the moon happy. And at the same time, I didn't even know which number should I hit. People still ask me, like, how many downloads should you hit in your first month? I can't really say, it really depends on your audience. I just know that for me back then, I didn't even have a really big audience. I had a lot of followers on Instagram, but what you might not know is I had a lot of followers from back in my fitness days, not necessarily a lot of people who were actually interested in business. So fast forward 2.5 years later, a year and a half after that first launch, or, almost 2 years now, and we have released 100 podcast episodes because welcome to the 100th episode of the Fast Forward Amy Show. I am a little bit weirded out by being here. I'm also recording this live, which is making me wildly uncomfortable. On top of that, my team made me wear a robe and a PJ, and you can see all of that on my YouTube channel or on IGTV. And I'm sitting here in my home studio, and for the first time in ages, I'm actually recording this podcast by myself. Back in the day when I first started, I always used to record my podcast in my PJs or just working against the deadline on Monday. So I had decided I was going to launch my podcast every Tuesday because I thought, if I have last minute stuff I need to do, at least I won't be doing it on a Sunday. I'll do it on a Monday. Cue super stressed out Mondays. And I was always just sitting in my office, recording a podcast last minute, then making the copy for the podcast last minute. I did everything myself. I didn't have a team. I had one virtual assistant who worked for me 10 hours a week, and that was it. And this is like a little under 2 years ago. So a lot has changed. But despite the fact that I didn't have a huge audience back then, I think that initial launch was successful despite all of my weird breathing in the podcast. And I used to edit that out, all of my breathing. I used to think I sounded like someone who ran up the stairs really fast and I couldn't breathe anymore. Often I still think that. Sometimes I listen to my own podcast and I just almost start hyperventilating just listening to me. And today I got this question from someone like, hey, what's your favorite episode? And I'm like, I don't know, because I don't re-listen to my episodes because I stopped breathing. Back to the launch. And then I'm going to take you with me on my CEO update. But I launched it and it was a success. And I can't believe that it took me so long to get over myself, because in the end people just really loved it and it was such a huge success. And I do have to attribute that to a couple of key factors that I did back then. When I launched it, I turned it into a whole thing. Like, I did host a podcast party. In the end, I think it cost me like €1,000 to throw that party, but I invited a bunch of clients, a bunch of friends and family, and even a bunch of potential clients who ended up becoming clients. So I hosted that party, organized all of that within 7 days around the new year, because it was January 7th. And I hosted a giveaway for my podcast. So it was a giveaway where everyone could win. You could win a couple of free courses when you made a review or a story about my podcast. And one of the biggest things that helped me to really create a bunch of really loyal listeners from the get-go was that I had said that if you start listening, like, I didn't just include an introduction episode, I included 4 episodes from the get-go so you could really binge listen. Yeah, and now we're 2 years later, and not only has a lot changed in the podcast, a lot has changed in my personal and my business life as well, and we usually batch our episodes. In the previous episode, in episode 99, you can actually hear all about that, about how we can batch up to 18 episodes in 2 days. You can even find my podcast batching system. But today I want to talk to you not just about the podcast, but about Fast Forward Amy the brand in general, and about how I've evolved as a CEO. Because the podcast for me marks the time when I started taking my business seriously. And as you can see, a lot can happen in that almost 2-year period. So if you are still listening after all of this babbling, because I'm uncomfortable, then I would like to take you with me on a trip. And I would like to take you with me on the trip of building the Fast Forward Amy brand throughout the period of 2020 and 2021. So if we go back to why I launched the podcast, I think that's a really important part. And after this, I'm going to give you the rest of my CEO updates. The goal of this episode for me, for you, is that you get an insight into what everything is really like right now, and that you kind of get an idea of how I've made certain decisions, how I've let go of some things, how I've had some wins, how I've had some fails, and how I feel about those. And sometimes I will have to pull up my clothes because as I'm wearing a robe, this is not the most elegant outfit I've ever worn on a podcast. So when I started launching the podcast, I did it because I wanted to get back to being creative. I was building my business. I was coaching a lot of people. I was correcting a lot of assignments. I still was running my mastermind back then. I had 17 clients in my mastermind. That was it. I still had my second business as well. Obviously, I was always doing a bunch of things at the same time. And I really wanted to do that podcast. And no one got it because they said, it is free. It will take up so much of your time. And I said, I'm going to do it because it's just in the long run, this is going to work. And after I launched it, my mom asked me like, but how long are you going to keep doing this? Because at a certain point, you won't have anything left to say, right? And I was like, no, I'm just going to keep doing this. And one of my big inspirations for creating a podcast was Amy Porterfield. I really loved Amy Porterfield's podcast. And I just remember, like every Thursday thinking, oh, does she have a new episode? And I went and listened and I got so much out of it. And I started really trusting her as a brand, and it made it really easy for me to buy from her. So she's also called Amy, so a little bit of an inspiration for me. And I just believed deep down, like my soul needs to be doing this creative part, and I need to be doing something that is not straight up sales that is not leading to a direct result. I need to be doing something to really build my brand. And in the end, I've always wanted to become a big public speaker. I still want to be able to go to the US to talk on big stages. I want to be next to Tony Robbins someday. I want to be invited on Amy Porterfield's podcast. I want to be invited on Marie TV with Marie Forleo. So I'm putting that out into the universe right now. And I now have 100 episodes to support that claim that I'm working on getting there. But okay, the summer after I launched the podcast, after everyone thought, cute, but are you getting anything out of it? I hit 375 sales for my Business Freedom Elevator, which was way more than the 17 mastermind clients I had that winter during the podcast launch. And what we had not realized is that throughout my podcast, so many people had started listening to my voice hours and hours on end, and that sometimes listening to your voice and having a podcast is way more powerful than just video content. I thought to myself, hey, but I've been creating videos and IG stories for years. I've been doing this for such a long time. What changed? And what changed was the willingness people had to buy from me at the get-go. Because the day we launched our pre-order for the Business Freedom Elevator for the first time, we hit 70 sales on that first day. And I had expected like 5. Because I'd never really stopped to consider the effect it had that people would be listening to my voice every week for half an hour. Because how many people's voices do you hear half an hour every week? Maybe your partner, maybe someone you work with, but not a lot of people. So it turned out that I think back then, 80% of the people who joined our Business Freedom Elevator came from our podcast or were avid podcast listeners. So all of a sudden, the whole, why are you doing this because it's free and takes up so much time, points people had became not valid anymore, just as I already assumed and my intuition was telling me that was a really good idea. And I think that's a really important lesson that you can learn as an entrepreneur. I think it's really important to learn from your environment, but I wanted to do something that no one in my environment had done before, but I saw people who were really big doing, and that's why I did it. And my intuition told me, despite all of the rational reasons not to do it, despite how busy I already am, I'm still going to do it. And my intuition was right. Just as it was half a year before that when I hired my first virtual assistant and everyone said, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't take on those extra costs. And by hiring my virtual assistant, I finally had created more space to really start expanding my business and to tune in more with what I wanted to do as an entrepreneur. So often, I think I'm going to speak from my experience, and this might be useful to you or it might not be, but from my experience, the best leaps forward in my business have come from making decisions no one supported, making decisions no one in my environment even got, hiring a business coach. My own business coach costs a fortune and no one in my environment got it. And now they're like, oh yeah, you should keep doing that because apparently it helps you because they've seen the results I've gotten. Hiring a virtual assistant, everyone was against that until they saw me building a really big program that has now been able to welcome over 1,000 students already. Launching the podcast, investing in certain courses, getting different types of coaching, names for programs that people have not gotten. For example, the Boss Up Mentorship. A lot of people thought that was a stupid name. The Business Freedom Elevator that has generated over 2 million in revenue in a year. People thought that was a stupid name. But sometimes you have this inkling of a feeling, you have this spark within you. And as an entrepreneur, as a creative person especially, you do need to listen to that spark and then support it with some evidence that it can work, because only listening to your intuition, not always the best idea either. When it comes to people, though, I would never listen to your intuition. I've also made a lot of mistakes in trusting people in the last 2 years. And I think with people, when you have a bad vibe with someone, immediately listen to it and don't go into business or don't do anything with that person. When you have a good vibe with someone, you should support that with evidence. This is just a general life tip I want to give you. Okay, that summer after, mega launch, and I turned my business into $1 million business. At that time, I had one person working with me, namely Laura. Laura is now on pregnancy leave, and she started with the idea of becoming my integrator. So team-wise, obviously, we've grown a lot over the past 2 years. Laura started as being the integrator. Throughout the years, Laura and I discovered that we're much better off being on the same side of the business, more creative, conceptual, abstract thinking, instead of really being in the nitty-gritty of details and processes. But we really tried really hard together to build that business. We launched that program. We did all of that together, and it was great. And yeah, so what I wanted to do now is kind of give you update of my wins and fails on in some big areas. And one of the first areas is obviously the podcast, because that's why we're here today. Does anyone think this is interesting? Am I doing a good job, team? Yeah, am I making sense? Okay, they can't not now, like if they now tell me no, it sucks and I have to start over, they know I won't do it. So okay, I actually can't see them sitting. I will record a behind the scenes later and I'll post it to my Instagram, where you can see the behind the scenes of how we've set up the room now. But they're sitting behind the screen, I'm looking at the screen, I'm going live on Instagram at the same time. This is just the whole vibe that's happening here. So I want to talk about the podcast. I want to talk about marketing. I want to talk about sales. I want to talk about me personally and my personal brand. And I want to talk about my team. And then we're going to turn this into like recapping it into a core message that I've prepared for you. So podcast wise, my biggest win of the past almost 2 years is definitely that there has been a podcast episode every single fucking Tuesday. Every Tuesday at 7 a.m. there has been a new episode. And this is a huge deal to me, because when I was going to launch it, one of the reasons I didn't launch it is because I didn't trust myself enough to do that. Because months before that, I was like, I'm going to launch a newsletter every Friday, or I'll be writing a new article. And I kept always just coming back on my promises I had made to myself. I kept not doing the important stuff. I kept renegotiating with myself, which is a terrible habit, because one of my life beliefs is never borrow from tomorrow. And that means self-respect wise, if you say you're going to work out, go and work out. Don't borrow from tomorrow's experiences, because what you do today is going to define your future, not what you're going to do tomorrow. So what you do today defines your future. Your actions today define your future, not your actions tomorrow. So stupidly, one of the fears I had about launching that podcast was that I was going to fuck up and not have that podcast episode every Tuesday. And I was afraid that I was going to end up by recording it really last minute every Monday and the quality would go down. Guess what? That did happen. I did record it every Monday and get really upset at myself in my PJs about recording it that Monday. But it was there every Tuesday. And I built up this confidence by making sure it launched every Tuesday, by writing out a process that someone could take over, that it was possible for me to launch it every Tuesday. And then I thought, if I'm able to create this output every single Tuesday, then it's also possible for me to start batching it more beforehand and to start doing less myself and to start delegating more in this. So I started creating this beginner confidence, and then that led me to changing more things. So what happened is I launched it every single Tuesday, and that's a really big win. And that's how we've gotten to 100 episodes, actually more, because we've done a few bonus episodes as well. And along with that really big win, there's also a really big fail. By the way, in that process of making sure it was there every single Tuesday, at a certain point, I did realize like I really have to start recording it myself. We got to start getting video with it. No, including video in it. So for episode 50, that's where we put the mark. The 50th episode, we started doing everything in video too. So if you go to our YouTube channel, if you go to our Instagram, that's where you can find all of the episodes starting at episode 50, where I walk you through our $1 million launch. Everything is in video there with a professional team. A bunch of those episodes I think are really, really bad in terms of like the way I look, because I wasn't focused enough on all of the details. We still grow in that. Like today I'm sitting here in a robe, did my own makeup. Sometimes someone else did my makeup. Sometimes someone did my hair. Sometimes the lighting was great. Sometimes it's not. Some of those episodes since episode 50 have been really, really beautifully done. And some episodes I look at myself and I think, Amy, how did you not see that your lipstick was on like halfway through, like over your lips? Sometimes the content was really fabulous. And sometimes after a few episodes, I think to myself, wow, you were really just going through the motions there, but you weren't really like focused on the quality. All of those things, the perfectionist in me would have liked everything to be perfect. But as a team, we put in the perfect effort. We really tried with everything we had to make everything as good as possible. We didn't have a studio. Then we had a videographer. Then we had a friend doing my hair and makeup. Then we started growing. And then at a certain point, everything was done professionally. And we thought, wait, this is too far from where we normally are. Just during the last podcast recordings, I was like, hey, can we make me look more like the girl next door? Because I don't like this look on me anymore. The brand has evolved. The team has evolved. So many things have changed. But as I said, my biggest win was the fact that it was there every Tuesday. And then I do see that there was a lot of learning things that we did. And there I sometimes do think that it's easier for my clients because they can learn straight from me, or they can take certain things or episodes or podcasts as an example where we were figuring out almost everything from the beginning, although we were also learning from an Amy Porterfield or a Marie Forleo. I definitely did underestimate the switch from going from audio only to video, because going to video, all of a sudden, I not only had to think about what I was saying, but I also had to look at what I was doing with my hands, which way I was looking. And it was very difficult to switch from audio only to video. By the way, there was not a me being mean about anyone I've worked with. I love everyone I've worked with so far. I just do think that sometimes I could have been a little bit more mindful of the way I looked on video. But let's face it, before that I was just recording everything in my PJs, so I guess we're progressing, and now it's episode 100 and I'm sitting here in a purple robe, so whatever. I was actually thinking maybe I feel like I need a new podcast image. It could be with this robe, because I love this color on me. And maybe we can turn it into this theme where you wake up with me, or you get ready with me, and every morning you listen to me, and I'm holding like a cup of coffee on my podcast cover visual. I need a new profile photo and everything as well, so I've got to change something there. Okay, that was a lot of side notes, but that was also kind of the point of this episode, is that it's very real and raw. So biggest win, it was there every single Tuesday. We focused a lot on maintenance, on improving our processes. And of all of the more than 100 steps of the podcast, I only do 6 of them. So I'm only included in actually recording the podcast. I'm included in choosing a title, in reviewing all of the copy, but I don't write the emails anymore. I don't touch any of the systems. Sometimes I don't even know how to log into any of the systems anymore, which is a running joke my team has. I almost do nothing. I batch 4 episodes on half a day, and the podcast gets out there. So with half a day a month, I can create a month's worth of content. We even make sure that there are 10 posts that get made of one podcast episode. It scores really well on SEO. I'm thinking now of having every episode article translated into Dutch to also score well on SEO. Bunch of stuff like that. We have so much content now that we can just refer our clients to, refer potential clients to. Big win. But there's also a really big fail in the podcasts, in my opinion. And normally I don't really look at things as failing. I just look at it as learning opportunities. Okay, so a learning opportunity. I am very proud that we were able to make sure the podcast airs every Tuesday. And, and I wish we would have had more space to focus on growing the podcast, on attracting new leads, on attracting a bigger English-speaking audience. And I know I have a bunch of strategies just ready to use to accomplish all of that, but we just did not have the space. We were a growing team. We had hundreds of active coaching clients, and we decided to focus our attention on our business and our core first, which is clients first. We have these rules in place, these principles within our team. We always focus on our clients first. And I still really, really believe in that. And I hope that now in the future, we're going to be able to focus more on actually growing the podcast to, really attract a new audience. So from January onwards, probably when the podcast has its 2-year anniversary, we're going to start probably switching it up. 1 week is just an episode with me. 1 week is an episode with one of my friends or people in my network who are going to tell you about their expertise, about an inspiring story they have, so you can learn from them. That is going to be good for you because you're going to learn more from other people. But it's also going to be good to grow the podcast, because that way we can actually make sure that we leverage their audience as well. Also, my team has been hounding me about going on other people's podcasts. I generally refuse because I just have limited time. I have 2 businesses. I have hundreds of active coaching clients. So I've always said I will focus on what is there first. And that was that maintenance. And I still really believe in the fact that has turned our businesses into very strong and successful businesses and an amazing, or 2 amazing teams. But I do know that it's time to grow now. So I don't look at not growing the numbers of the podcast enough as a failure, but I do look at it as something that is definitely annoying me a little bit, and that I want to change towards the future. Also because we really just need new leads, and I still want to get on that stage with Tony Robbins at some point. And in order to get on that stage with Tony Robbins needs to know who I am. I look forward to the day where this clip gets taken out of this episode and gets put in this promo of me being on stage with Tony Robbins. Yeah. I hope you believe in it too, because I need multiple people's energy for that to happen. Um, by the way, you might be thinking, well, Amy, this is interesting. Or you might think, nope, I'm going to stop listening now. I don't know what you're thinking. I can't really know what you're thinking. But I do want to say we've done very little things to actually growth hack the podcast. Like we've barely ever asked you for a review. But if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, I have a gift for you if you would be so nice as to leave me a review. And also, if you don't want the gift, I would still want to ask you if if you've learned anything from me or gotten inspired or whatever. If you like the Fast Forward Amy Show, go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a short review. The 5 reviews that we do put in a raffle, we're going to put 5 reviews in a raffle, and you're all going to win a really special new limited edition mug that I'm going to announce at the end of this episode, okay? But just know that if you leave us a review about what you like about the podcast on Apple Podcasts, you will be entered into the raffle, and 5 of you will win one of our new limited edition special mugs that Robin is going to design. Okay, so podcast area, we covered that. Next, I wanted to look at marketing, sales, team, and personal update, just my mindset right now where I am in my business. So sales-wise, I think I'm going to check which message Caroline texted me. So sales-wise, we are hitting a 2 million euro year this year. Like about that. So it's very difficult sometimes because we have payment plans. We have payment plans that run until December, which is like our year's end. But then we also have booked revenue that happens after that year. And I know we will definitely be hitting, in terms of booked revenue for this year, a 2 million euro year, which is fairly incredible. And that means that we've almost doubled last year's revenue. And there we've always like doubled, tripled, 10x the revenue from previous years. So we've definitely been growing very exponentially in our business. And I'm really happy about that. Not only because we obviously have been making a lot of money, which is really nice for a startup business with only like 6 people on the team. But this all sounded weird. It's still very uncomfortable for me to talk about money. That's so weird because I teach so much about mindset and numbers, but just recording a podcast episode like this where we're not even cutting except for the little fiasco with the wall thing, it is very difficult for me to just talk about numbers because I just know people are going to talk shit about this, but I'm going to move through it. I want to show you what's possible. I went from nothing to having a company that makes over 2 million euros in this year during the current crisis the world has been seeing, with everything that's been going on in my personal life as well. That is a major win in sales. Not just the amount of revenue we hit, but also the amount of the big retention rate we have with our clients. So we have a lot of clients who actively ask us for a follow-up program, who want to keep getting coached by us. So that's really nice. And our biggest marketing machine is not our podcast anymore. It's not our Instagram account. It's not our email list. Our marketing machine are our clients. Our clients' success is the biggest reason we keep on getting new clients and we keep on hitting those high sales. So that has felt like a really big win. In terms of sales, that's the big win, I think. Learning points there, or fails, whatever, is that we have not been focused on our passive revenue whatsoever. Passive sales, passive income, I do really well at that together with my business partner in my other business. I can coach people through that. I can set it all up. But in our own business, we've been so focused on really strong launches. We've nailed that now, the launches. We've done launches of 700K, 800K, 900K and more. But on the flip side, that has meant that we haven't been focused on our passive funnel. So that's definitely something we're going to be doing in the future too. I hope you like this little behind the scenes where I'm like, that went well, this is what we're going to be changing. Because we keep on learning, Like last week, we closed our launch of the Business Freedom Elevator. Immediately the day after, we sat together, all of us with the entire team, like, okay, what did we learn? What did we do really well? What could have gone better? What do we want to optimize if we do this another time? Stuff like that. So I'm doing the same thing with you. And I want to invite you to look at the same thing. So you might not have a podcast, but you might have an Instagram account. Okay, what are you really proud of from the past year? And what would you like to change, or what has been a learning opportunity for you for the upcoming year? Same with sales. What has been going really well for us? Launches. What should or could be going better is our passive sales. In terms of marketing, I think, well, there, obviously our marketing has brought in sales. That's a really big win. also there, the learning opportunity, and like marketing wise, we've really gotten our message a lot clearer. We're still working on it. We're working on a stronger brand story, but I think we have really been getting better and better at knowing what our ideal client is thinking and making our marketing around them. Like, for example, our last podcast episodes have all been really like more specific, more about like the feelings and the relatability and the certain tips and tricks they needed. So I feel like we've really started improving in not just doing random ass marketing, but making sure our marketing plan and our sales plan are aligned. So that feels like a really big win. On the flip side, with marketing, the same as a podcast, obviously the podcast is a part of our marketing department. What we want to be doing better in the future is our lead generation. So that's the same thing as having the podcast grow, having our email list grow, attracting new followers. We're always doing it, but it's like a byproduct right now. It's not a focus. So growing, like making sure that lead generation is actually like popping and like booming is definitely something we're going to be focused on in the upcoming 100 episodes or in the upcoming year of our business and our growth at Fast Forward Amy. Then I have two more things to talk about, and I'm going to talk about the team aspect first. So you might have heard me say it, but when I started the podcast, I had no one on my payroll. I had a virtual assistant for 10 hours a week, which by the way, I recommend to everyone is to get a virtual assistant. You think you won't know what to give them in terms of tasks, but believe me, you're doing a bunch of shit you should not be doing in your business. I had one virtual assistant back then. And right now I am at a point where I have a sales manager, a junior sales manager, a head of products and coaches and coaching. Wow, I can't speak anymore. By the way, these are like ish terms because we're not really big on all of the strict terminology at Fast Forward Amy. We're figuring out our roles as we go, but we have someone, sales manager, junior sales manager, who's also in support coaching. We have our head of all of our products and programs. We have someone fully in graphics and all of the visual things, and obviously everything that's happening behind my back here. We have a full-time copywriter, and I hope in the future we're going to be adding a videographer and someone in systems and a bunch of other virtual assistants to our team. We also have a lot of freelancers we already work with on a fixed basis, and that ebbs and flows. We have a copywriter. The copywriter will soon be taking on more things in her niche, so working less for us, so we'll be looking for someone new. It's an ongoing flow. We have Elisa, who's in customer service, who works for us basically like every month the same amount of hours, who's like a key role in our business, but she's not on our full-time payroll. I do feel like it's really different to actually be someone's boss versus working with people freelance, which is what I was already doing for a while. Being someone's boss comes with a whole bunch of extra responsibilities. I think I recently recorded a podcast episode about that. I think it might be coming up because I already recorded those. Robin, is there a pod? Yeah, I did that. So I'll be filling you in on all of that soon. And also, if you want to work with us, we have applications open on our site at all times. I just want to say that, like, if you want to work at Team Fast Forward Amy, come and apply on our website. We have like open applications, so come and have a look. That's fastforwardamy.com. So go there. The biggest thing I've learned about the team is where I wanted to go with this is for the longest time, because we were growing, we were so uncomfortable in that growth. Also because I've never worked in a really corporate, really big business, that I also really didn't know what to do. Like, I was used to being an entrepreneur and I thought I am a really good entrepreneur and a team is part of that. But I didn't realize that being an entrepreneur and being a manager and a leader are completely different things. So I had to learn about that. And then I went a little bit too far in that. And I got to this place where we were getting organized. And that was a goal in and of itself. But your organization should be there to support your goals. And we got really distracted from our goals because we were so focused on our organization. So if you ever get into that position, know that a team in and of itself isn't the goal. Hitting your goals and doing that together could be the goal. But getting organized in itself isn't the goal. It's a way to support you hitting your goals. And the most beautiful, I think, thing I've realized, or the gift I've gotten throughout all of my learnings in this past year, you know, like building a team, growing a team, is that it is so true that people support a world they helped create. And it is my task as a leader, not just as an entrepreneur, but as a leader, to really help the people on my team grow. So step by step, I'm learning more and more about that. You'll hear more about it in my future podcast episode. But it has really helped me to go from being an entrepreneur and a coach with my clients to really looking at my team members as me being their coach as well, and looking at how can I like help them unfold into the best versions of themselves, both within and outside of the company. And I hope I can learn a lot more about that and update you in the future too. So team wise, sometimes all of the wages and the paychecks scare the shit out of me. Like I used to think of a launch and think, oh yay, then I can like go on a trip, or I could buy this with that. And now we have a launch and we have the stats, and I look at our just like the fixed costs we have every month. I'm like, okay, so this is great. If I go into a coma, I can now pay my team for like 2 years. Because I also feel a lot of responsibility in providing for them. But that has been the biggest hack. My team has made it so that my business is definitely not a hobby anymore. It's been the best decision I've ever made to start working with people, because now it's not just me building a dream, it's all of us building a dream together, but also making sure we commit, making sure we hit those targets. And when you hit those targets together, it's so much more fun than hitting them by yourself. Like last year, we had our Business Freedom Elevator launch, and we hit a $1 million launch. And Laura and I were celebrating that with our families, which was nice, but they didn't really get it. And now when we have a launch or when we do a certain thing, we can celebrate it with the team, and we have behind the scenes videos of everyone just cheering and jumping up and down. And it's so special to be able to do this with my team. Earlier today, I was talking to my voice coach, and I was telling her about my team and a workshop we'll be doing soon about the brand story of our business, because that's something I want to grow in. And I told her like, yeah, it would be really fun to do it all together, because I work with amazing people who are so committed and dedicated. And she said, like, yeah, when I look at your team, that's like the goal for me, is to have a team like them, because there is so much trust. You see how you guys work together. It's so beautiful. So despite all of the hiccups and despite all of the times I've wanted to give up on that the past 2 years, I am really, really proud of how we got here, and also of the balloons that you can see behind me on this video, because I definitely wouldn't have gotten these balloons by myself. And yeah, it's very humbling to work with people towards the same goals, the same dreams, the same targets. And by doing that we get to help hundreds of clients do the same, just feels really amazing. So only wins there. And also I failed every day, and I'm still failing every day there. I think last but not least, before I wrap up this episode, by the way, please do remember, if you like this episode, please let me know. Because if you don't tag me and if you don't post a review, I'm not going to continue. Like, I fucking hate it. I'm just joking. I love making the podcast, but I also wish that people would share it to their stories sometimes, and that maybe you want to leave a little review on Apple Podcasts. That would be really great. Personally, there's so much. There's also so much I'm not talking about in this episode, because it's personal, and that kind of aligns with some of the decisions I've been making. You might know I have a best friend, Jessica. We talk a lot. We talk every morning and every night. She's my work wife. I talk a lot with my parents. I have amazing family and friends in my life. Some people with my brothers, I talk less about business. They're mostly always worried about me that I work too much. My friends, they follow some things online, some things they don't follow online. My cousin, she works as a consultant in HR for me sometimes. But aside from that, her child is my godchild. Like, I have so many amazing people in my life, and I get to talk to them about the ups and downs of my business and of building it as a personal brand. And sometimes it's really weird, because sometimes I'll be making stories for a launch, but I won't be replying to people's WhatsApp messages, and I feel guilty about that. And then the question arises, like, why do I feel guilty about that? Do I really not have the time, or have I just been really obsessed about my business? All of it is true, like all of the different sides. And I was actually talking to a friend about that last week, and then we closed up our launch last week. You might recognize this, like putting in time with your business and then being in front of the camera makes it seem like you're available. Whereas for me, being in front of the camera is being at work, because literally doing this live today will probably make a lot of people in my environment feel like, oh, she's available now, I can give her a call. But doing this live, recording this podcast episode is obviously working for me. Although I really like it. That's the beauty of, choosing your own job and your own work. Long story short, where I wanted to head as a personal update, and we've talked about podcast, marketing, sales, team. Personally, I feel like it is time for me to take a step back, to not be pulling so hard on achieving all the things, to not be making a million stories anymore. I feel like I have been able, or I've been able to, how do I say this? To create an amazing brand and attract literally thousands of clients in both of my businesses through my personality, through my authentic authority. And that has like made the ball rolling. It got the ball rolling. But where I want to go now is I still want to have that personal brand. I still want to put in my own style, my own soul into everything I do, into my coaches, into my programs. But I especially want to put that into my team and have them grow the brand. So I want to turn the brand Fast Forward Amy into just a brand that could survive without my face as well. We've created the Fast Forward Amy Academy. We're going to be looking at what we're going to do there. But I want to get to this point where my marketing is so strong, the brand is so strong, that if I am truly sick or if something really is happening in my personal life, I could take a break. But also, I want to let go of that pressure of being liked. And I think it's such a double-edged sword, because being a little bit of a people pleaser like me, or a lot like me, can be really beneficial to your business, because I can feel what people need. I can feel what my clients need. I can make people literally like me and buy from me and spend thousands of euros on me. It's still so weird to say all of this, but I'm just taking you with me in the behind the scenes. So I can achieve all of that, but at the same time, that's a lot of pressure, and that's a lot of things that might not always be so healthy for you. I think it's kind of like stepping on the scale, and after a while, you start attaching your self-worth to the scale. When you are growing your business, at some point, it is really important to go all in and to just put everything you have into it and to get those sales, because you need to get the sales. You need to get the leads. You need to go all in order to make it happen. But then at the same time, it's really important that on time you take a little step back and you start running the business like a business. And I've been working towards that, and I feel like I'm at this point where I'm ready to, as I said, make maybe fewer stories, automate more things, work more with ads, work more with consultants, have my team take up more ownership for me, to allow them the space to also fuck up and make mistakes and do things differently than I would do them. For me to just like take a step back, step into my leadership role, into my CEO role, which is why this is a CEO update as well, and to really just turn it into a really strong brand that can withstand the test of time. So that's where I'm at personally. And I am at this point where I feel like if at some point I decide, to have a baby or something like that, I want to be able to do that. So I don't know how long I'll be coaching anymore, how long I'll be doing my own live sessions. Obviously, every time I sign people up for a program, I'm committed to doing that. But I'm thinking maybe in 2 years, I want to be doing things completely differently, maybe doing everything passively, not launching anymore. I don't really know yet, but I think that's a fun part of running your own business, is that you get to choose. And that's what it's all about. And that is also the message I want to give you is, I don't know if this was inspiring at all. I don't know if it was useful, but if you're thinking like, wow, that's a really big, that's a whole lot of progress in only 2 years. It is, and sometimes I can't believe how much has happened in that 2-year period. Going from recording this in my PJs, going from doing this all by myself to having a team, living in a $1 million mansion, all of those things. But I want to tell you that it is possible for you too. There are just a few key ingredients you need in order to do that. And one of those is actually the belief that it's possible. And I hope, if anything, I hope that today's episode showed you that I didn't even believe I was going to publish 100 episodes, but I kind of kept working on myself until I really did believe it, until I really did have a process that supported me. And if I was able to create this, you can do this too. But the key is in committing to yourself, in being dedicated, in being afraid and doing it anyways. So that really big thing you've been wanting to do, that course you want to launch, that podcast you want to host, that show you want to do, that content you want to make, the reels you want to make, it doesn't really matter what it is, but you got to do it. Action is the thing, really drawing the line between where you are now and where you can be tomorrow. The difference between those two is action and belief. And I know that the belief might be difficult right now, but take it from someone who's doubted herself more than ever in the past and who still does that sometimes. When this belief hits you, if you then start taking action, after a while, the belief will follow because the results will follow and more action will follow that. So If you are thinking of starting your own podcast, it wouldn't be the 100th episode of the Fast Forward Amy Show if I wouldn't give you a free resource on how to do that. Through fastforwardamy.com/start your podcast, you can find my guide where I teach you all of the different steps that you will need to start your podcast. It's really, really valuable. I wish I would have had it. So click on the link in the description to grab that guide and have at it. I feel like creating this podcast really was one of the really big determining factors of my success. And when I look at when did I start taking my business seriously, when did I really start growing? It was when I started taking my sales seriously, my clients seriously, and definitely when I also added in the podcast and when I took my own intuition seriously, that I was able to make the right decisions for my podcast. So fastforwardamy.com/start your podcast. And then, as I already said, if you like this episode, by the way, if you're watching live, feel free to leave a comment. If you like this episode, I would really love a review on Apple Podcasts, because that way we can reach more people. We can achieve our own targets of growing the podcast. So leave us a little review, and 5 of you you will get entered into a raffle, and 5 of you will get our You Can Do It mug. I've been looking for a really long time. I've been thinking for a really long time on what I can make and put on a mug that really motivates you. That is a little bit soothing. So when in the morning you feel like, oh, can I do it or can't I? And you're grabbing your cup of coffee, I would love to gift you with a You Can Do It Fast Forward Amy mug, because I believe you can do it. And thanks for sticking with me. Hope to see you next week, Tuesday, for a new episode of the Fast Forward Amy Show. And if you like this episode, definitely feel free to tag me on Instagram. And see you next week. Have a happy Tuesday.